the top 10 unsettling disappearances that could be linked to a parallel universe. Starting us off at number 10, we have Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller made his first record in 1935, but it took a few years to establish himself as a great musician. Luckily for Glenn, after some time, his band began doing really well for themselves, and after performing at Glen Island Casino in New York, they began to really rise up the ladder. By 1940, they were dominating the radio with hit songs like In the Mood and Tuxedo Junction, eventually earning him a baffling 15 to 20K a week for his career. But his promising career was all forced to a halt in 1942 when he joined the US Army in World War II. Luckily, while assigned, Glenn was able to lead the Army Air Force Band, inspiring and boosting morale for the troops he fought alongside. That was until he mysteriously vanished one chilly December in 1944. Stationed in England at the time, Glenn had learned that his band was to head over to Paris, and so on December 15th, Glenn followed orders and boarded a transport plane that was headed for the French capital. But strangely, Glenn never arrived in Paris that day. In fact, Glenn was never seen again. And even more curious was that no trace of his plane crash was ever found, nor have any remains ever been uncovered. Coming in at number 9, Craig Freer. At the time of his disappearance in 2004, Craig was a 17-year-old high school soccer player with lots of friends and a girlfriend he loved. Reportedly, on the day he went missing, he went to visit his girlfriend at her apartment building before he was supposed to be heading to work. But when his mother, Veronica, went into his work to say hello, he was nowhere to be found. In fact, she was told Craig hadn't worked there for a while as he just stopped showing up for his shifts. Now, incredibly confused, his mom tried calling him to get an explanation and was relieved when her son picked up. Craig assured her he would be home to talk with her about it soon, but he never actually made it home. The last confirmed sighting was from 2 teenage boys who spotted him walking along some railroad tracks, and it was reported that he put a finger to his lips as if to make a shh sound before walking into the woods and disappearing forever. Coming in next in our number 8 spot, Dorothy Arnold. Back in 1910, Dorothy Arnold was a 25-year-old socialite and heiress to a perfume empire. So when the news broke that she suddenly disappeared in the middle of the day without a trace, it was an absolute scandal. Apparently at the time, Arnold had had a huge falling out with her father, who was refusing to let her move out of the house. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to him, she was having a secret affair with a man 20 years her senior and kept a secret P.O. box to write to him. But the really weird part about the whole situation is that after her strange disappearance, Dorothy's dad was allegedly so worried about the bad publicity that the scandal might bring upon the family, he was reluctant to bring the case to the police for several months. Instead, he hired his own PI, but sadly was never able to uncover any leads to where his daughter could be hiding. Of course, at the time, there were plenty of rumors circulating about the socialite's whereabouts. Some believed her secret beau had offed her, while others thought she'd taken her own life. Another popular theory was that she had been secretly pregnant and ran away to avoid social embarrassment. But as she was never found, alive or dead, the mystery continues to this day. Next up at number 7, Roald Amundsen. The year was 1928 when celebrity explorer Roald Amundsen vanished into thin air and was never to be seen again. Roald had become a world-famous face after his 1911 expedition where he successfully reached the South Pole, and from that point forward he was considered one of the greatest explorers to have ever lived. So imagine everyone's surprise when he went missing on a trip far less dangerous than any of his previous missions. The day was June 18th, 1928, and believe it or not, it was not his mission he disappeared on, but on a rescue trip for an already missing person. Along with a crew of 5, Roald boarded the rescue flight and headed for the crew that had crashed while returning from the North Pole. But neither Roald his crew, or his aircraft were ever seen again. Due to his popularity, a search for the team began nearly immediately, but after no evidence of a crash and no bodies were found, it was called off. Years later, in 2004 and 2009, the Norwegian Navy attempted to search for wreckage of the mysterious disappearing aircraft, but they too never uncovered a single piece of evidence, and whatever happened to Roald remains a mystery to this day. Coming in at number 6. Hannah Upp. What makes the case of Hannah Upp particularly mysterious is that she actually disappeared a total of 3 times in roughly 11 years. Now, that alone is strange, but what's even more unique is that she was also diagnosed with dissociative fugue, which is a rare form of amnesia that results in a temporary loss of identity. Kind of makes all the disappearances even more unsettling. The first time it happened was in 2008, and Hannah left for a run along Riverside Drive, but strangely never came home that night. It took nearly 2 weeks of searching, but she was discovered floating in the water face down and rescued. However, she had no recollection of who she was or how she ended up there. Then in 2010, she went missing on her first day of work as a teacher's assistant. They found her purse, wallet, and cell phone were on a nearby footpath, but strangely, after 2 days, she called her mom, confused, asking to come pick her up. Sadly, the third disappearance happened shortly after Hurricane Irma, and as soon as the storm cleared on September 14th, she left her apartment and hasn't been seen since. Coming in at number 5, Sherry Lynn Marlar. On the morning of June 6, 1984, 12-year-old Sherry woke up to see her stepfather heading out to the bank and asked if she could tag along. Her stepfather Raymond was happy to have her join him on the errand. However, rather predictably, when they arrived at the bank and Sherry saw how much paperwork there was to fill out, she got a little bored. So she asked her stepfather if she could go and get a soda, upon which Raymond handed her $1 and told her to go get one from the gas station across the street. When Raymond was done at the bank, he walked back to his truck, assuming Sherry would be waiting for him already. But she wasn't there. So he waited another 20 minutes, but when Sherry still hadn't returned from the gas station, he began to worry. He decided to call Sherry's mom to see if she had somehow seen her, but of course she hadn't. Later that day, Sherry was officially declared missing and a full-scale search was launched. But to this day, no one has ever been able to find out what happened to the girl who crossed the street for a soda. Coming in at number 4, Virginia Dare and the Roanoke Colony. One of the most famous disappearances of all time wasn't just one person, but in fact an entire colony of people. Back in 1587, during the time that Europeans were heading to colonize the New World, a group of 100 settlers found the small island of Roanoke, now modern-day Dare Country in North Carolina, and decided to make it their home. Shortly after the group settled, it was determined that the man John White would be the leader of the group, likely due to the fact that his wife had just given birth to their daughter Virginia Dare, making her the first ever English-born child in the New World. However, after some time in the colony, John headed back to England in search of more supplies for his town. What was meant to be a short visit accidentally turned into a 3-year stay due to the Anglo-Spanish War. However, once he was permitted to return, he made his way back to America, only to find that his entire colony had vanished out of thin air. He looked around for clues for where they could have gone, but there was no sign of battle and no graves reported in the area, seemingly pointing towards the idea that they had moved to a new location. All John found was the word Croatoan carved into a single wooden post, and to this day the disappearance of the Roanoke colony remains a giant mystery. Coming in at number 3, Theodosia Burr, daughter of the 3rd Vice President of the United States, Aaron Burr. If you have heard of a little Broadway musical called Hamilton, or just happen to be a history buff, then you might already be familiar with Miss Theodosia Burr. But one thing they left out of the show was that Theodosia mysteriously vanished in 1813. She was quite the controversial figure in her day, after Hamilton alluded that her father had incestuous relationship with the girl. It's believed that this is what led to the duel where Burr killed Hamilton, and Theodosia subsequently helping her father flee the country. But from there, her life only got worse. It's believed the young woman suffered uterine cancer, and on top of that wrote to her doctor sharing symptoms of hysterical fits, citing seeing figures in the night, witnessing flashes of light, and hearing strange noises. However, once her son passed from malaria, she went into a deep depression and decided to go and visit her father, who she desperately missed. One day she boarded the Patriot, a small boat that was scheduled to take her from Georgetown to New York, where her father had recently returned. But curiously, the boat never arrived in New York. In fact, the boat never arrived anywhere as far as anyone could find. It was as if it vanished into another dimension. To this day, the disappearance of Theodosia Burr remains a huge mystery. Coming in at number 2. Amelia Earhart. Although I would venture to say this woman needs no introduction. Just in case you aren't familiar, in 1932, Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean unaccompanied, and was just overall an incredible woman. On top of her 1932 trip, she was one of the first aviators to promote commercial air travel. She wrote best-selling books about her flying experiences, and was instrumental in the formation of the 99s, which was an organization for female pilots. Essentially, she was a super cool badass pilot in the 30s, which made her disappearance all the more bone-chilling. In 1937, Amelia decided to set out on one of the greatest expeditions to date. She was going to be the first woman to fly all the way around the globe. Determined to make history, along with her navigator Fred Noonan, Amelia left Miami June 1st and headed towards New Guinea. By the next day, they made it, and from there, the plan was to head towards Howland Island, which was a small, uninhabited landmass between Hawaii and Australia. But somewhere en route to their next destination, caught in a bad storm with a low fuel tank, Amelia tragically lost contact with her Coast Guard liaison and literally vanished into thin air. From what anyone has ever been able to find, the plane never landed, and neither her nor Fred were ever seen again. And last up in our number 1 spot is Frederick Valentic. In the evening of Saturday, October 21st, 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentic informed the Melbourne Air Traffic Control that he was being accompanied by an aircraft about 1,000 feet above him. So imagine Frederick's shock when the air traffic control replied to him saying that there was no known traffic at that level. Now, a little backstory: Frederick was a fairly new pilot who had twice applied to be in the Royal Australian Air Force but was rejected on the basis of inadequate qualifications. However, this story doesn't end with a mysterious crash that one could assume resulted in death. It's much more mysterious than that. After learning that there was not supposed to be anything above him, Frederick went on to describe what he was seeing, saying that it was a large, unknown aircraft that appeared to be illuminated by 4 bright landing lights. He then reported that the aircraft was approaching him from the east and orbiting above him. When asked to identify the aircraft, Frederick was not able to, only further describing its looks, this time mentioning it had a shiny metal surface and a green light on it. For the last time, the air traffic control radioed over asking to please identify the aircraft, to which he famously replied, "It's not an aircraft." His transmission was then interrupted by an unidentified noise described as metallic scraping sounds before all was lost. To this day, neither Frederick or his aircraft have ever been found, and many conspiracy theorists believe he was either abducted by aliens or found some kind of portal to an alternate universe.